Sometimes, the people we judge the fastest are the ones who stand up for us when no one else will. When a humble waitress was humiliated and fired just for serving a group of rough-looking bikers, she thought her life had fallen apart. But the next day, the truth roared back into town, and what those bikers did changed everything. Stay till the end, because this story proves that kindness, no matter how small, never goes unseen. The morning sun filtered through the smudged glass windows of Daisy's diner, casting long streaks of gold across the checkered floor. The clatter of dishes, the hiss of the coffee machine, and the hum of casual chatter filled the air as Hannah Blake hurried between tables with her usual gentle smile. She'd been working there for 3 years, juggling long shifts and late nights just to keep food on the table for her little brother and sick mother. Life wasn't easy, but Hannah had never let hardship harden her. Her kindness was her strength, her patience her armor. Every customer, whether grumpy or grateful, got the same warmth from her, a small act of decency in a world that often forgot it. Just after the lunch rush, when the diner began to quiet, the front door swung open, and 6 men walked in wearing leather jackets and boots heavy with dust. Conversations faltered, forks hovered midair, and a few customers leaned in to whisper. The letters on the back of their jackets read, Guardians MC. To most people in town, that was enough to paint a picture: bikers, troublemakers, outsiders. Hannah saw them differently. She saw weary faces, sunburnt skin, and eyes that carried stories no one had ever asked to hear. Her manager, Mr. Crawford, shot her a warning glance. He was the kind of man who cared more about appearances than people. "Don't serve them," he muttered, loud enough for her to hear but quiet enough to keep his image clean. "We don't need that kind of crowd here." Hannah hesitated. The men stood quietly, waiting to be acknowledged. One of them, a tall man with streaks of gray in his beard, smiled politely. "Ma'am, could we get a table? Been on the road since dawn." His voice was deep but kind. Something in it made her heart soften. She grabbed a few menus and nodded. "Of course, this way." Crawford's glare burned into her back as she guided them to a corner booth. The bikers sat down carefully, their large frames almost comically out of place among the dainty booths and pastel walls. They ordered simple food, coffee, burgers, fries, pie, and spoke to her with respect. Every "please" and "thank you" chipped away at the prejudices that hung in the air. By the time they finished, even a few other customers seemed to relax, though Crawford never did. When Hannah returned with their check, one of the bikers slipped a folded bill under his empty cup. She noticed it but didn't mention it. Kindness didn't need an audience. As they stood to leave, Crawford stormed out from the back, his face red with fury. "You're fired," he barked, throwing her apron on the counter. "Did you not hear me? We don't serve their type." The bikers froze, anger flashing in their eyes. Hannah's heart sank. "I was just doing my job," she said softly, her voice trembling. Crawford sneered. "Then find another one." She gathered her things in silence, refusing to cry. As she stepped out into the sun, the bikers followed her with solemn faces. They had seen her kindness, her courage. Tomorrow, they decided, she wouldn't walk alone. The next morning, Hannah woke up to the faint sound of her alarm and the weight of yesterday's humiliation pressing heavily on her chest. She stared at the cracked ceiling of her small apartment, the same one she'd been fighting to keep since her mother fell ill and her little brother started school. Losing that job wasn't just about pride, it was survival. Her rent was due in a week, her mother's medicine running low, and now she had nothing but a worn-out uniform and a pink slip. She brewed a pot of coffee with trembling hands, staring out the small kitchen window. The sun had barely risen, painting the street below in pale amber. Normally, this hour meant tying her apron, catching the early bus, and greeting the familiar faces at Daisy's diner. But today, the world felt silent, empty. She tried to shake off the shame, telling herself it wasn't her fault, that doing the right thing shouldn't feel like a punishment. Then, a low rumble broke the stillness. It started faintly, then grew louder, echoing off the buildings like distant thunder. Hannah frowned and leaned closer to the window. A line of motorcycles, gleaming chrome and leather, was rolling slowly down her street. Her heart skipped. She recognized them immediately. The Guardians MC, the men from yesterday. Within moments, a dozen bikers parked neatly in front of her building, engines idling like loyal beasts. Neighbors peeked out from curtains, whispering in confusion. Hannah froze, unsure whether to hide or open the door. Before she could decide, there was a firm knock, 3 quick taps. Cautiously, She cracked the door open. Standing there was the tall, gray-bearded biker from the diner. His name, stitched on his jacket, read, Duke. He removed his sunglasses, and his eyes, warm and sincere, met hers. "Morning, Miss Hannah," he said with a gentle smile. "We owe you breakfast." She blinked, confused. I don't understand." Duke chuckled softly. "You showed respect when nobody else did. You treated us like people, not criminals. That means something. So, we figured we'd return the favor." Behind him, another biker held out a paper bag that smelled of fresh pastries and coffee. Another stepped forward with a folded newspaper. On the front page was a headline that made her breath catch: "Waitress fired for serving bikers, small town divided." Someone at the diner must have recorded the incident. "You're trending, sweetheart," Duke said kindly. "Half the town's on your side. The other half, well, they'll come around." Tears welled in Hannah's eyes. She wasn't used to being seen, much less defended. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered. "Maybe not," Duke said, slipping his sunglasses back on. "But sometimes the world needs reminding, kindness ain't weakness." As they stood there, the roar of engines and the glint of morning sun reflected off a dozen chrome bikes. For the first time in a long while, Hannah felt hope, fierce, steady, and alive. She wasn't alone anymore.